Pokemon Insurgence is one of my favorite Pokemon fan games, and I think one of the biggest reasons why is because of the Delta Pokemon in this game. Alternate forms of original Pokemon that have new designs, new typings, and new move pools. And I've been playing a lot of Chaos OU recently, and you know, just playing a lot of these fake mon meta games where I'm just like, some of these mons are really cool. So today's video, we're going to be going over 10 Delta Pokemon from Pokemon Insurgence that surpass their original form. If you guys do enjoy this video, please leave a like down below and subscribe to the channel. Join the kingdom. We're on our way to 1,000 subscribers by the end of 2025. We're almost at 800 subscribers, and again, thank everyone for all the support. The kingdom is growing on a daily basis. Well, yeah, let us get into Chaos OU today. And the first Delta Pokemon I want to be talking about is Delta Arcanine. Now, this thing made it into Chaos OU, and I think I did mention Delta Arcanine in the previous video. Maybe I did, maybe I didn't. At this point, I've forgotten you know what I've actually mentioned. But yeah, compared to regular Arcanine, as you can see, the mon has made it into it's now a NU Pokemon. Obviously this is a Natdex format, but in Scarlet and Violet, Arcanine is a NU, is a PU Pokemon. Actually, he's a PU Pokemon. How the mighty have fallen. But to be fair, Arcanine has had a pretty good history in doubles VGC thanks to Intimidate and you know, just being a fire type, which is quite useful in certain VGC metagames. Now, let's say Delta Arcanine existed in VGC, it would probably be the same situation, to be honest. You still have Intimidate, plus you have Stab E-Speed rather than not having Stab on it, with a Dragon typing as well, so you still keep that Grass, you know, resist, and you also gain a Water resist as well. So either way, yeah, Delta Arcanine would obviously be pretty good in doubles slash VGC formats. But speaking about singles, and particularly in Chaos OU, what does Delta Arcanine have over regular Arcanine? Well, they have the same stats, and pretty much all of these Delta Pokemon are going to have the same stats as their original forms. However, it's all about the move pool and the typing that makes all the difference, and potentially the ability as well. So what Delta Arcanine can have access to is Heavy Duty Boots, Extreme Speed, you know, basically just like a mini Arceus basically, but you also have like the ability of Dragonite, for example, so you're able to set up quite reliably with Heavy Duty Boots, have Stab E-Speed, you know, you have some decent coverage in I think this gets Earthquake. Yeah, you have decent coverage in Earthquake or Superpower. Shame it doesn't get CC, but you know, I don't think Arcanine had CC back in Gen 6, so I guess they didn't want to give it CC. But regardless, yeah, this is the typical set for Delta Arcanine here. Just have Stab E-Speed and coverage to make sure you're able to hit Rock and Steel type Pokemon reliably. So yeah, basically you would just do what Arceus does with like a max HP, so you don't really need any speed on this. Maximum attack, you really want to make sure you're getting that maximum attack. 110 attack in Gen 9 standards isn't bad, but you know, being able to get to 350 attack is actually pretty solid. And yeah, this is basically what Delta Arcanine does. And to be fair, I'm not really too sure what Arcanine is up to in PU and Scarlet and Violet. I don't really play usage-based tiering like that this generation. You know, I blame Terra for that, obviously. But yeah, it will pretty much just do like typical Arcanine things. Could be a bulky mon with Will-O-Wisp and that, but Delta Arcanine is more, you know, offensively inclined. Even though the typing isn't too bad, like Dragon normal, they're not the best typings synergy wise, but at least you get like a ghost immunity, and Dragon's elemental resistances are quite decent. But yeah, different defensive profile, but you know, Delta Arcanine leans more into, you know, the what do you call it, the offensive side of things. So yeah, that is it for Delta Arcanine. Moving on to some other Pokemon I wanted to talk about as well. We're gonna group the next 3 Pokemon together because I just have to be honest. We have Delta Regice, Delta Regirock, and Delta Registeel. You know, having some of the most underwhelming legendary Pokemon of all time, they just got completely buffed, to be honest. Like, it's crazy when you actually look at their stats, which aren't even too bad by you know, Gen 9 standards, particularly having 200 in defense and special defense respectively between Regice and Regirock. And then Registeel still having its 150 in both defenses. You just have to change the typing, give them some good moves, give them reliable recovery, and you know, they're in a pretty good position. So yeah, why is Delta Regice obviously better than regular Regice? I don't really think I have to explain too much the fact that oh, my phone's vibrating. I don't think I have to explain too much the fact that water is just superior defensively than ice ever will be. Having that stealth rock weakness isn't good. Having one resist isn't good. You know, compared to water, water only has 2 weaknesses, particularly electric is typically a specially inclined type, and when Delta Regice has 200 special defense, it can actually tank things quite reliably, and they all kind of function the same. It really just depends on what you need. Like both Regice and Regirock Delta both have abilities that give them water immunities, and obviously this matters a lot more in Regirock Delta since it's a ground type, so cancelling out one of your 3 weaknesses is also pretty good. But yeah, these are basically just the Pokemon that they wish they could have been in the actual mainline games, where Regirock just consistently kept getting outclassed, you know, even after his debut generation by bulkier rock types, especially Garganacl. I've gone over Delta Regirock before, but, you know, in terms of like Delta Regice, like, again, it's a pretty solid water type. Having a bulky water type with such big special bulk, and you can just focus all on the Fizz Def, is also pretty good. You get access to Scald, you have Toxic, you have Reliable Recovery, you have Stealth Rock, you even have Ice Beam. Even, like, you're better at doing Regice's job than, you know, like Regice itself. Like, again, water is just so much better than ice, and you know, having Scald and Reliable Recovery, I think these guys wouldn't be as effective as they were if they didn't have Reliable Recovery. But moving on to Registeel though, this one is a lot more interesting compared to the other two, because these two are just gonna be your standard Fizz Def slash special defensive walls, while still having quite gargantuan bulk on the opposite side of the spectrum. But Registeel, on the other hand, has more interesting stuff going on. It has a custom ability from Pokemon Insurgence called Foundry, which is basically the aerialate, the pixelate abilities, but for fire type moves. But instead of changing normal to the next type, it's rock to fire type, which is pretty interesting. But that does have an interesting interaction exclusive to Insurgence, which is the fact that you have a fire type Stealth Rock. Now, it's really interesting, the fire type Stealth Rock, because obviously now the type effectiveness has changed. If you're a fire weak Pokemon, you're going to be taking 25% from Stealth Rock. If you're X4 weak to fire, like being a grass steel type like Artana or Ferrothorn, you're now going to be taking 50% from the fire Stealth Rocks, which is actually pretty nice. It's nice to flip the dynamic, because typically, obviously, steel types resist rock, so they only take 6% from normal Stealth Rocks. But with the fire Stealth Rocks, taking a quarter of your HP is also pretty nice. And obviously, Registeel still has his bulk. Fair enough, fire is obviously worse defensively than steel, but, you know, fire is still another typing with quite useful resistances like fairy and you know, fire itself and grass, and bug as well. But you only end up having 3 weaknesses too, so it's only rock, fire, and water. But, you know, shame you have to run boots, unlike these guys. These guys don't have to run boots, they can just run leftovers. To be fair, boots is still a universal item. Anyone can run boots. I've seen 6 boots teams in any format, to be fair. So, you know, you could get, like, it doesn't really mind running boots. But yeah, this is also just another really bulky Pokemon, has the coverage, has the reliable recovery. So yeah, that is it for the Delta Regi trio here. They are quite an improvement from their base forms, and to be fair, Registeel is still hitting it up in NU even after insane power creep, losing moves like you know, Seismic Toss, for example. But, you know, Regice and Regirock, those guys are in the trenches basically, and their Delta forms, these guys, all 3 of them are quite solid presences in Chaos OU. So, you know, massive improvement. But yeah, moving on to our 5th Pokemon. I forgot I did these 3 at the exact same time. But yeah, we're moving on to Delta Emolga. Now, Emolga, I don't think you guys really care if I say this anyway, but yeah, my sister's favorite, I have a sister, but my sister's favorite Pokemon was Emolga from the black and white anime and all that. So yeah, Delta Emolga, banned from Chaos OU. So you're probably wondering, how can this be banned from Chaos OU? 428 base stat total. Like, this one can't be anything crazy. But like I said, guys, they might have the same stats, but move pool and especially ability and typing play a massive part in it. But what makes a Delta Emolga over the edge? Now, its ability Blaze Boost. Now, Blaze Boost, so essentially it has a second form which it activates when it's in Blaze Boost form. And you know, the shiny is quite cool for this, I can't lie. It's actually quite nice. I don't overall like the design of like the face and that. Like, I don't think it actually looks like a proper Pokemon. But regardless, yeah, the blue flames, I'll always like fangirl over blue flames anyway. But yeah, Blaze Boost, fire type moves boost the user's stats. Now, every time Delta Emolga wants to use a fire type move, it will boost its attack, special attack, and speed by 1 stage before using said attack. So you're gonna get a +1 boost you're gonna have a boost every time you're attacking, basically, with your fire type stab. And obviously Emolga doesn't have, I mean, the stats are pretty bad. I'm not gonna try and justify that, but 75 is good enough. And the speed tier is actually decent as well, particularly when you're taking into the fact that every time you're clicking your fire type moves, you're getting a +1 speed boost and a +1 special attack boost. Now it gets access to Nasty Plot, and I think it gets Fiery Dance. No, it doesn't actually get Fiery Dance, but why did I think it got Fiery Dance? Regardless, yeah, you have Nasty Plot, Fire Blast, Dark Pulse, and, you know, Energy Ball to hit, you know, water type Pokemon super effectively. And yeah, this mon got banned from Chaos OU, and there's like no reason why it should even be legal in the tier. Like, again, just clicking your fire type moves gives you a free damage before even attacking. And yeah, it's just a very powerful Pokemon to have. And obviously Emolga has seen no sort of relevancy in like any like higher level tier. Like, I think the best tier Emolga was in was like Black White PU, I think. Like, I don't even know if it got banned from that tier. I haven't really looked into Black White PU in like 10,000 years. But regardless, yeah, Emolga has never been a good Pokemon whatsoever. So the fact that Delta Emolga is banned from a format that has a higher power level than even that Dex OU really goes to show how much effort they made to make sure that Delta Emolga wasn't in the trenches, and is potentially one of the is definitely in contention of being one of the strongest Delta Pokemon from Pokemon Insurgence for sure. But yeah, very fun Pokemon. Never gonna see the light of day in Chaos OU, which is a shame, but at the same time, I don't want this broken ass shit in the tier. But yeah, moving on to number 6, we got Delta Superior. And to be fair, the gap between Delta Superior and regular Superior is not that big. Like, even to this day, obviously Superior took a you know, gen off in Generation 8, so we didn't get to see how strong it would have been. But in Gen 9 at least, it's still a UU level Pokemon, and it does have a niche in OU, especially with Terra Stella. The only reason why I know about like Superior State in like Gen 9 is because it's an OU mon, and I somewhat keep up with that tier. Again, I don't want to be playing Gen 9 OU, but you know, you read the discussion thread from time to time and you find out about these things. But regardless, what does Delta Superior have over regular Superior? Obviously, the typing's a lot better. Water Dragon versus Grass is like night and day at this point. It's a very solid typing, and you also come with 2 very good abilities. Now, Multi-Scale is very good, but again, doesn't really come into clutch too much. But Drizzle, that's the big one. Having another rain setter that isn't Pelipper, non-legendary Pokemon rain setter that isn't Pelipper or Politoed, pretty solid to have, especially with Surp stats. Like you have to remember, Surp is a somewhat bulky Pokemon. You have 95 in both defensives, and you have 75 HP. Again, 75 HP is pretty average, but 95 in the defenses is pretty good, especially with 113 speed. So you end up being the fastest range setter in the game, you know, if you're considering Kyogre, Pelipper, and you know, Politoed here. But yeah, its identity has pretty much changed from regular Superior. Like, you know, regular Superior has Contrary Leaf Storm. This is what it's been known for since Generation 6. You know, has Glare to annoy your threats. You know, in previous generations, like Gen 6 to Gen 7, you know, Hidden Power legal meta games, you know, would run Hidden Power Ground and Rock, especially in Oras. Like, this one is like a top 5 Pokemon in Oras OU, so, you know, it's been doing that same thing. And, you know, in Gen 9, it has Terra Blast, Stella, and all of that good stuff as well. But yeah, you know, Delta Superior just becomes like the best rain setter in the mainline games if it actually existed. Also has Glare, has Flip Turn as well, so it can pivot as well. It has Slack Off too. I was gonna say, like, sure, this thing still has recovery as well, so you end up being quite a decently bulky Pokemon, especially on like the special side versus compared to like Pelipper, for example. You have Pivoting, you have Glare, you also have, you know, like your stab, you know, in rain, like Weather Ball or Scald or Surf, for example. And yeah, this mon is just very, very solid at what it does. And to be fair, the gap between the two is not that big, but obviously Delta Superior would probably see a lot more usage than regular Superior due to the fact that you're basically a better rain setter than Pelipper, for example. So yeah, this one would be OU in Scarlet and Violet very easily as well. So yeah, number 7 is a bit more of a worse Pokemon, definitely below average compared to everything else we've compared. But Delta Sunflora here, particularly if you take its Mega Evolution into account, compared to regular Sunflora, which has absolutely nothing. But, you know, Again, this is potentially the worst fully evolved grass type of all time. I don't think there's anything worse than this. You know, even something like Maractus clears Sunflora pretty easily. But yeah, what does Delta Sunflora Mega have access to? Now, it has access to an ability called Chloro Fury, which basically boosts its, I think it's special attack, and speed. It gets a +1 speed boost, but for every fallen ally that Delta Sunflora has on its team, it gets like an additional boost to its special attack and attack stats. So it's basically like Supreme Overlord, but except you get like a bigger boost on your offensive stats, but only getting a +1 speed boost. And as you can see, 45 base speed, a +1 speed boost really isn't helping this guy, but at the same time, it's a lot better than anything that this guy has done in the competitive scene in the past, you know, 22 years, because this is a Gen 2 mon and it hasn't done anything. This at least has been brought to some games in Chaos OU and actually can threaten some slower teams, but again, there's nothing too crazy. You know, it's just the ability that makes it like pretty cool. If it didn't have this ability, it would obviously just be another really bad Pokemon. Again, it's like faster than Sunflora, but that 15 extra speed really doesn't help you. But yeah, 135 special attack, 45 base speed, Chloro Fury. Like if you have 3 fallen allies, you get a +3 special attack boost, +1 speed, and like coming off of that special attack stat, it actually can threaten a lot of things like Fire Poison, decent typing. Does have access to Earth Power and Energy Balls, just so it can actually hit, like, you get maximum coverage with this. You don't really get any setup options, to be honest. Like, you get Nasty Claw, but again, 45 speed, you don't need it, especially with your ability. And then, like, this doesn't even outspeed, like, base 100s. That's how sad this mon is. Like, if they actually gave it, like, 60 speed, or even, like, 50, it would have been usable, but like 45 is just too hard. But again, this is better than anything Sunflora has done, so it's a W for this Pokemon in general. But yeah, that is it for Delta Sunflora. Moving on to number 8, we got Delta Vespiquen. Now, this is how you make a Pokemon relevant, guys. This is how you make a Pokemon really relevant. Now, Delta Vespiquen, Fire Steel typing. We've seen this with Heatran, one of the best, you know, abilities, especially when you get an ability that you know, is able to complement that typing quite well. Heatran has Flash Fire, so it's no longer neutral to fire, it's now immune to it. This has Levitate, so you're now immune to your biggest weakness of a 4x ground weakness. So yeah, what does Delta Vespiquen have access to? Now again, this Pokemon is not the most offensive Pokemon. Again, is more, it was always built to be a defensive Pokemon, but when you have a Pokemon with a bug flying typing, especially in a pre-heavy duty boots era, there's no way this is ever going to be a consistent defensive Pokemon in it. So yeah, Vespiquen always just fell to the wayside. Obviously in Gen 9 is a ZU mon. Even with heavy duty boots, this mon doesn't really do anything. Like, I feel like in lower tiers back in the day, people tried to make like Defend Order work. I don't even know if that's still in the game, to be honest. It's basically like cosmic power boosting, but it's not even like you have like stored power to really do anything. You just kind of stall people out with Toxic and Defend Order. But Delta Vespiquen, on the other hand, has a lot more utility going for it. It does have access to Stealth Rocks. It does have Volt Switch to pivot out. I think it does get Recovery. It has Roost, which is also pretty nice. And then, does it get Heal Order? No, it doesn't get Heal Order. But anyway, Heal Order would be gone in Generation 9 anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But having access to Roost, Reliable Recovery, that's all pretty good. And yeah, this is all it really does, to be honest. Like, maybe you go Lava Plume if it gets it. Again, this isn't a mon I've particularly used in Chaos OU too much. Again, like, is really solid. I'm not gonna lie, this is a lot better than Vespiquen ever was. And I don't know about his OU viability in Gen 9, but it definitely is a lot better than regular Vespiquen. Like, it reliably could be a Heatran competition Pokemon, just because your bulk is actually not that bad. Like, to be honest, your bulk is not bad. But Heatran having to worry about ground types prior to terastallizing is also a big issue for it. This doesn't have that issue. It really only has to worry about is fighting and water weaknesses. But you know, you have Volt Switch to kind of punish the bulky waters. You pivot out on them, and then, you know, obviously in like Gen 9, I don't even, does this thing get Toxic in Gen 9? Again, I'm not bothered to go on the main, but I'm assuming it wouldn't have Toxic, but it still has some decent potential here. And even some offensive sets, it has Speed Boost, but again, 40 speed. You're going to need a lot of speed boosts to actually be a threatening Pokemon, so just stick to Levitate. But yeah, Delta Vespiquen, a much needed improvement for a Pokemon designed as a defensive threat, but obviously let down by its, you know, initial typing quite heavily, to be honest. But yeah, moving on to number 9, we have another offensive threat here. Delta Chandelure versus regular Chandelure. Again, Chandelure is currently sitting in the NU tier, which is a shame. But to be fair, Chandelure's, you know, competitive career has always been like, it's never been an OU staple because there's always just been Gengar getting in its way, and even something like Miss Magius, for example. I feel like at some point Miss Magius and Chandelure were probably like Gen 5 UU or something. I don't really know, but you know, Chandelure's biggest flaw has always been like his average speed tier. For Ghost type, it actually is quite bulky as an offensive attacker. Like 90 in both defenses are quite solid, but he's always had quite a massive special attack stat. So, you know, it's not too bad. But Delta Chandelure, I think you get a much better typing, to be honest. Like, Fairy Fire, again, is an unused typing in the mainline games, and I'm waiting to see an actual Pokemon utilizing this typing quite effectively. But what Delta Chandelure has is much greater damage output, in my opinion. Fairy Aura is obviously going to boost Moonblast to astronomical levels of power compared to Shadow Ball's somewhat paltry damage output, which, you know, on a mon with Chandelure's special attack stat, it clicking Shadow Ball doesn't seem to do as much damage as it should do. But with Delta Chandelure, Fairy Aura boosted Moonblast coming off of a special attack stat even higher than Xerneas's by quite a bit, that's going to do a lot of damage. So what does it typically do? It pretty much just does what regular Chandelure does. For one of these stats, like, you basically are just locked into doing you know, a choice specs or a choice scar sort of set. You have Fire Blast, Flamethrower, whatever, Energy Ball. Like, you basically have Chandelure's move pool, but obviously you're swapping out the Ghost type attacks for Fairy type attacks. So, you know, take that as you will. Even has Moonlight as well, which Chandelure doesn't really get any reliable recovery. So if you wanted to end up doing like a Fizz Def bulky sort of, you know, heavy duty boots, calm mindset, like, you're pretty much set there in terms of having coverage. Like, all you really need is both of your stabs. They do, I don't think there's a single type that resists them, obviously. Like, you know, Fairy complements fire quite well. You're able to hit rock types, you're able to, oh yeah, you can't hit opposing fire types. Doesn't matter though, +1 Moonblast is probably doing a whole lot to some decent fire types anyway. But yeah, Moonlight is an option. In terms of hitting fire types, you have Earth Power as well. Something like Heatran, having what do you call it, Earth Power would be quite useful for that. But yeah, typically just Choice Scarf, Choice Specs, has access to Trick as well. Like, it is just Chandelure with a much more useful typing for, you know, Generation 9, for example. Like, I think like Fairy, you obviously resist Dark. Ghost, you have to worry about opposing Ghost types and Dark type Pokemon as well. Priority Sucker Punch. Previous generations, you had to worry about Pursuit, for example. But yeah, overall, Delta Chandelure, this would honestly be quite an OU staple in Gen 9 OU, in my opinion. Like, this one would be quite dangerous, to be honest. Having a Fairy Oromon with 145 special attack and Moonblast base power to take into account, very, very solid to have. And finally, the last Pokemon we're going to be discussing in this video, we got Delta Meloetta. Now, Meloetta's biggest issue has obviously been the fact that its Aria form, which is, you know, the normal psychic typing, you know, has been quite underwhelming in terms of like comparing it to other psychic type Pokemon. Even something like Necrozma, Alakazam, like, you've been outclassed by non-legendary and legendary psychic type Pokemon, you know, since Generation 5. And obviously you'll probably be thinking, oh, Meloetta has a, you know, alternative form, which actually would be a solid UU minimum Pokemon if it was actually separated from its original form. But obviously Game Freak didn't want to code it like that, so this mon is stuck in you know, mediocrity. It is in NU regular Meloetta, so it's actually still doing decent for itself. Like, I feel like a mon with this special attack stat and special defense is always going to do decent in the lower tiers. But Delta Meloetta doesn't really have to worry about this problem. Number one, it basically has its Pirouette form as its default form, and number two, Insurgence made the good idea of separating both forms together. So you have this one, which doesn't see any usage in Chaos OU because it's just worse anyway. Like, you're basically the regular Meloetta with a Dark Psychic typing over normal Psychic. Again, a pretty average Pokemon at best. But when you have a Dark Fairy typing with the ability Filter and also the Speed 10 attack stat, this is a really solid Pokemon that doesn't have to switch forms, run Relic Song to be able to, you know, change between forms. It is just this form from the get-go. So yeah, obviously would have a completely different playstyle compared to regular Meloetta because it's a physical attacker now. So what does it typically do? Either run like a choice set, you have like Trick Choice Band, or Trick Choice Scarf, for example, and then you just run like dual stabs and then like Fire Punch, for example. I say Fire Punch because, you know, being able, at least in Chaos OU, being able to hit like Echo, Magnezone, and you know, other steel type Pokemon for decent damage is also pretty good. You have a Drain Punch as well, but you know, Fire Punch to get that Oko is pretty nice. You also have access to U-turn, I believe, so if you don't want to run Fire Punch, just U-turn, and like you're just going to be swapping out quite effectively. But yeah, this is basically what it does. I think it doesn't get any setup options. It doesn't really get any setup options, but again, Z-moves are legal in Chaos OU, so you know, you can obviously run a Z-move on a Pokemon of this like attack stat. But yeah, this is what Meloetta should be. I hope Game Freak will one day separate the two forms together, because I really think Meloetta Pirouette form would be a really solid Pokemon. Like I've used this in like Mono-type, for example. Like I was able to use Meloetta on Mono Psychic, be able to change. Well, it wasn't Mono Psychic, it was Mono Normal, because you can't have a fighting type with Psychic, obviously. But yeah, I just wish this Pokemon was its own form and it would be a lot better. But yeah, we're gonna end off this video here. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. Let me know down below what your favorite Delta Pokemon are, and you know, if you have a one that I should have mentioned. Oh, my nose is getting congested. But yeah, thanks for watching, you guys. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.